Today I'm telling you everything I've learned about elder care through my own journey. Here we go. Hi, I'm Jessica Ballant, a physical therapist and Pilates teacher, and I want to bring science-based knowledge, empathy, courage, support, love, and hopefully some fun to the journeys we have with our bodies. There is hope and strength in your body, and my goal is to help you find it. Hi, and welcome back to Meet Your Body. I am so happy to have you here today for an episode that is very, very important to me and very personal to me as well. Many of you know that for the past 4 years, my husband and I have been in charge of the care for my mother-in-law, who was diagnosed with Alzheimer's years ago. And I'll tell you a little bit about that story without going into too much detail about her story. That's her story to tell, but I will get into that. And then what I really want to talk about is everything I have learned about elder care over the past 4 years. I am a physical therapist, as you know. I've worked in medicine for a long time, and it's amazing to me how little I even knew about elder care. I feel like it is an area that is not talked about, that is very confusing, can be very hard to navigate, but it's something we all need to know about, whether it means taking care of a relative or someone in our life as they age, or it's simply being prepared ourselves as we age, because we will all hopefully get to a point that we are aging. And it's important to know these things. So some of it might be a little hard to listen to, only in that I think it's an area we would all love to just turn away from and ignore. I completely understand that. It's not always comfortable to think about aging. It's not comfortable to think about taking care of someone in our lives as they age. Yet, like I said, I think many of us, the majority of us, are going to be in a situation at some point that we need to understand either care for ourselves or care for a loved one. And I really want to be here to help pave that way for you and smooth that journey a little bit. So I'll start by telling you a little bit about our own story. 4 years ago, a little more than 4 years ago, my husband got a call that his mom had fallen and was going to the hospital. Luckily, her and my father-in-law lived only about 30 minutes from us. And I remember that day very clearly. My husband was at home with our 18-month-old at the time. Our 5-year-old was at a play date, and I was in the middle of seeing a physical therapy patient. And I got the call from my husband, and I said to my patient, I am so sorry. I have to leave right now. I rushed to grab our daughter from the play date, rushed home to be with our 18-month-old so my husband could rush down to their home and find out what was going on. That was the very last time that both of my in-laws, my father-in-law and mother-in-law, were ever in their home. They both were admitted to the hospital. 2 weeks later, my father-in-law died very suddenly, and my husband and I, became the ones who were in charge of my mother-in-law's care. She had been living at home. She had started to lose some independence, but she was at home climbing stairs. She was doing laundry. She was doing great. We had started to work through some care, knowing some dementia could increase at that point. But she couldn't go back home to live independently. So we suddenly were in charge of that care and were thrown into the world of care management and everything that entailed. And it has been a 4-year journey. And a few days ago, my mother-in-law passed on. We sat vigil by her bedside for 6 days. She was a very strong woman, and she passed on. And I had known for quite a while that I wanted to do a podcast about elder care. And this timing feels right in that I feel like it's going to let me process my emotions a little bit and talk them through with you. I appreciate you being here and letting me do that. It's going to help me kind of come full circle on this long journey a little. And also, what I've really realized from posting just a few times over the past week and getting so many amazing messages and comments from you all, I've realized how many people have been through this and are currently going through this as well, which means there's a lot of us that are going to go through it if we haven't yet. It, like I said in the intro, it is a huge area that I feel that we have done a disservice for human beings. We have not made it a clear pathway on how we take care of ourselves or other people as we age. It's a system that feels broken, and I really want to help all of us navigate it so that we can experience dignity and love and respect and continue this amazing human journey even as we age. So today I'm going to talk you through some really, really specific tips and logistical things that we have learned along this journey, things to help, again, kind of smooth the pathway a little bit when you start. And then I'll get into more kind of personal things along the way as well. So if you are taking notes, I have about 12 different kind of little pieces that I want to touch on and talk about. So if you are one who likes to have bullet points, this would be number one. Number one is to really start to see yourself as a support system. And whether that's for your parents, whether it's for your partner, because it really might be that. A lot of us will end up being a caregiver for our partner. So it could be your parents, could be your partner, it could be grandparents, it could be an aunt and uncle. You might be even in your 20s thinking, okay, this is a long way off for me, but I see it happening in my grandparents. And you might be the one to help take the reins and even kind of tell your parents what to look for with your grandparents. There's a lot of different ways that this could come about. But the first thing that I would recommend is beginning from the very beginning to be a support system for those people in your lives and just starting to notice the little things that may change. You might be the first one to notice it. And we started noticing things here and there with my mother-in-law. And we were the ones who kind of said, hey, you know what? Why don't we set an appointment here? Why don't we start this? And I and my brother-in-law were the first ones to take my mother-in-law to a neurologist. And I remember sitting there with her. No one had taken her yet. She hadn't gone. She wasn't going to go on her own accord, but she agreed to go for us. And I remember sitting there, taking the tests, going through things and realizing, okay, this is where we're starting. This is the journey we're starting. But also, for our specific case with Alzheimer's, there's medication that you can get on to help slow the progress. And if we had taken her even 6 months earlier, it might have helped a little bit. And just knowing that it's easy to keep your mouth shut sometimes, especially when it's a partner or a family member. There is so much history, and I'm not going to discount that. There's so much history and emotions involved with family. So much. It's also really hard. You could be that person saying things, and it's really hard to be the one thinking, I might lose my independence soon. I might not be able to drive. They want to take this away from me. They want to take this away from me. Those are a lot of hard and also very valid things that you will need to navigate. And I am not here to tell you exactly how to do it because I don't know. It's hard. That's what I can tell you. A lot of this stuff is hard work. What I can say is stick with it. It's important. If you are noticing things and no one is willing to really be open or receptive to that yet, take notes. Start to do your own research. That's what we were doing a little bit. I was kind of doing some research on the side, so I had an idea of what might be going on so I could come with information. Come at it from a place of love and not frustration. Again, when it's family and history involved, it can be easy to get right to that place of frustration, but you have to set that aside. You have to find some patience and you have to come at it from a place of love. If it is not received, you can know that you did your best and maybe come at it again at another point. For us, it was really kind of a year of starting to throw it out there, starting to say, hey, we're seeing this. Have you seen this? It was a year before some of that was received. So my first tip is just be a support system. Don't put your head in the sand. Start to notice what's happening. Trust what you're seeing. Take notes if you need to see if it's a pattern, and just start to really open those lines of communication so that when something might come up, it might be more well received. Tip number 2 stems and comes straight from what we were just talking about. So the first one is really kind of to be a support system, to understand that's what you're going to be, start to form that kind of relationship. The next is to go straight to that place of opening a line of communication and asking questions. So you really it's helpful if you know ahead of time what someone's wishes are. Just in general, what are your wishes for being older? Do you see yourself wanting to stay in your house for the rest of your life? Do you really see that as a big wish, as being in a big house, being independent? If you have a big house now, is it something you may want to sell, to downsize to a smaller house? Does a retirement community where some things are provided for you, does that sound exciting and fun? Would you want to move closer to us if you're across the country? Is that something you would be willing to do? And then getting even deeper, what are your wishes for when you do pass? Do you want to be buried? Do you want to be in a cemetery? Do you want to be in a mausoleum? Do you want to be cremated? Would you want to be on life support? These are hard questions to ask, but when you feel ready, these are things that honestly can be so helpful to know ahead of time. We experienced a very traumatic, fast loss of my father-in-law, and a lot of these things were not in place. And it simply made the time that much more difficult, trying to find things as we were grieving, as we were also trying to place my mother-in-law. Luckily, both my husband and his brother clearly remembered their dad talking about what his wishes were for after he passed. They both had the clear same memory, so that helped in that respect. So again, these are hard things to talk about, but I highly recommend starting to open that line of communication, get some of these answers so that it can smooth the path afterwards. And then in addition to that, kind of another piece, a side note to this, you also may have to open some lines of communication with siblings. There are various relationships that we can all have with our siblings, but again, it can be helpful ahead of time to know a little bit about who might take what role, who might be more willing to drive, if there's driving involved in helping to care for someone. Again, if someone may be moving to be closer to one sibling versus the other. There are a lot of different factors involved, and I know you don't need me to explain them all, but just having a very general, even surface level understanding of what a sibling might be able to contribute, if they are able to, if they're willing to leave all the decision making to you, if they want to be involved. There's a lot of pieces, so just starting to open some of those lines can be helpful as well. All right, third tip, and we're starting to get really practical here. Collect documents. That means I have a lot here for you. You're going to want and need pictures of driver's licenses, marriage certificate, a divorce certificate if it's applicable. The person you're caring for, you're going to need their parents' names, including their mother's maiden name. You're going to want to make sure you know your mother's maiden name if that's who you're caring for. Everyone's date of birth, copies of medical insurance cards, and then any kind of paperwork that might relate to a long-term care policy that might be in place or a life insurance policy. Then more kind of deeper levels, if the person you're caring for has an attorney they've worked with at all, which might be holding a will, you want to have the attorney's name. You might want a copy of the will. You might want things like just knowing who holds the mortgage on a home, bank account information, and I don't mean things like people need to access your bank, but just even knowing where accounts are. If you trust that person, that can be helpful. And then a big one people don't always think about is military discharge paperwork. So if you were in the military, If the person you're caring for was in the military, you will need a copy of their military discharge paperwork. And again, this can be for anyone. If you're listening to this thinking, okay, I am starting to age, I am getting to the point I kind of want to start to get my ducks in a row, make copies of all those things, put them in a file. To be honest, my parents did this for me years ago, and I didn't want to think about it. I'm like, I don't want that. I think I told them that. I don't want that. I don't want to think about that. Why are you giving me that? Now that I'm 45 and kind of almost aging myself, but also have been through it with my in-laws, I appreciate their forethought in having some of that prepared for me. And it wasn't a lot, but it was just enough that I had a little bit of a way to help them if something were to happen. And so again, whether it's you collecting all of that or whether it's you taking care of someone and starting to find it now, it is really helpful to have all those documents. You will need them for many various things as the process continues. Fourth, you will want and need a power of attorney. This is something in all of these things, I highly recommend that you talk to an attorney if you have one or need one. There are so many different details and cases out there, and I can't even get into all of the things about a will and finances. And I mean, we had to go through some of that, and then a lot of it didn't apply to us. I can say, though, you will need a power of attorney. In general, at least here in Colorado, you have a couple options. You can do a general power of attorney, which covers everything, or you can do two separate ones, financial and medical. But what it means is that someone is giving you permission to make decisions for them if they are incapacitated to make their own decisions. This has been so important and so vital for us. So I mean, there were three of us, and I was one of the people listed on the medical power of attorney, which has been so important because I'm the one who became the medical advocate for my mother-in-law, and it meant I was able to make all the decisions that they were asking me about. She was really incapacitated from the very beginning on decision making because of the Alzheimer's. But we didn't have any powers of attorney in place when this first started, which means we were scrambling very quickly to find how we could get it done. We were trying to get it done in the hospital because we really had to make a decision for them. But again, there was nothing in place. Having it ahead of time will make those things so much easier, because when you're in the midst of either grief or trauma or stress or fight or flight from these things happening quickly, it's overwhelming. It can be extremely overwhelming. And so having it in place is really helpful. So again, you decide what kind of powers of attorney are going to be most helpful to you, but you may want to just look into and make sure that, again, either you, if you are the person, then you're creating a power of attorney to have someone you trust make decisions for you. Or again, if it's parents and you're listening to this, you might want to start to, if you are taking care of your elderly parents, you may want to just gently nudge and remind them of power of attorney is helpful. So again, financial will make sure that you can make financial decisions, meaning you can pay their bills if they're incapacitated. You can make decisions like that. You can sign for them, very important, especially when it comes to bills and bank accounts and trying to take care of all of that. And then I can say absolutely from a fact, because it affected me so much, to be on a medical power of attorney so that you can make those medical decisions. And then one quick side note to that, make sure that you have copies. I have a file on my computer. I have every single piece of paperwork that was involved with this, because again, it will come up just even as short as 2.5, 3 weeks ago. I was trying to make some decisions, and it was kind of a new facility, and they needed me to send over the medical power of attorney showing my name was on it. Pull it up on my computer. I emailed it within 2 minutes, because a lot of these things, it's better if they're fast-tracked. So make sure if somebody gets it done, great. Make sure you have a copy, okay? A paper copy if you have it. Take a picture of it. Get a PDF. Put it on your computer. Put it in your phone so it's easily available. And again, I recommend that with insurance cards as well. And I didn't mention this earlier, sorry, in my paperwork. Social Security. You are going to need copies of Social Security cards or at least the Social Security number at a minimum. So that will be included in that as well. All right, next, and if you're keeping track, it's number 5. I just want to mention estate attorneys, because this was another thing I didn't even know was out there. I didn't even know what an estate attorney was. There are people who are estate attorneys. Many of you probably know much more than I do. So an estate attorney can help, again, with wills and those kind of things. For us, it was a little bit different situation. We just needed help knowing what to do. We needed help. Like this specific estate attorney helped us when there wasn't a will in place. There was a house that needed to be sold, and those assets needed to be put towards helping with care for my mother-in-law. They had a social worker on staff who helped us research facilities to place my mother-in-law, because we had no idea where to start with that, just no clue. So it was helpful to us in that way. But this time around, we won't need one at all. It really, like I said, it depends on your situation and so many things. But if you feel overwhelmed, if something happens, if you need some guidance, especially about individual state laws, because things are different by state, see if you can ask around friends in your community or find an estate attorney that may be able to help. All right, number 6. And again, you can go by these step by step. I've kind of listed them in things that you can do first all the way to last, just to help, think of it as a check mark. If you're not quite there yet, but you're preparing for it, go down the list over the next, 4 to 6 weeks. Take your time with it. But I really do want this to be something that helps you very logistically, very practically get through a really hard time. So number 6 is research what kind of insurance either you have or, again, the person you're caring for has. Have copies of their insurance cards. Insurance can be extremely complicated. Everyone has different. Some people have supplemental. Some people are going to have Medicare plus a backup or secondary insurance. There are so many different things. What I can tell you is the majority of insurance plans do not cover long-term care. I'll say that again. The majority of insurance plans that most people have, even with a secondary, okay, and this includes Medicare. Medicare, most insurance plans do not cover long-term care. Long-term care means if your loved one or you needs help in a facility for a long-term period of time. And that is what we have needed for the past 4 years. So my mother-in-law fell, she broke her wrist, she went into a short-term rehab facility. So that would be someone who falls, who has a total hip replacement, something like that, and they can't go back home yet because of their needs, but they will be able to in about 2 weeks after they get through the healing and the rehabilitation process. That's short-term rehabilitation. So we were there for 2 weeks. Insurance paid for that. But then we needed long-term care. My mother-in-law could not go back home. She was not independent. She was in a wheelchair. She couldn't do anything for herself. So we needed long-term care, and there was absolutely no health insurance that we had available for that. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Another thing is Medicaid. So I'm not talking Medicare now. Medicaid does cover long-term care to a point. And what I mean by that is many, many facilities do not accept Medicaid. Okay, so if you are at a point that you will be using Medicaid or you need to use Medicaid, then you will need to research long-term care facilities that accept it. Just don't get into a place where you assume everyone will, because I promise we were in that place and it's not true. So not every place will. And I am going to be very clear right now and very honest on how I feel about a healthcare system that does not support people in long-term care. This is my soapbox. Long-term care is a hard place to be, and there are more facilities out there that don't do a good job than do. And I will be completely honest, in our country, you are going to get better care if you have money, period. I've seen it over and over again in the last 4 years. And yes, I know we all know that, but it is absolutely evident in long-term care. And I don't like it, but it's the truth. And so I'm going to tell you now, one lesson that we have learned is to start saving now for long-term care. If you want really good care, start saving now. There are long-term care insurance policies. So that's another thing, going back to you researching to find out what your loved one has. Find out if there's a long-term care policy, because there might be. And that's a different beast. That's something that might cover in the gaps. I don't know about it because we didn't have it, so we didn't deal with it. But my husband and I are already talking now about getting it for ourselves because we've seen what we've seen over the last 4 years. So find out what your loved one has, or if it's you, start to get some of that in place. I can tell you in general, in Colorado, for the care that we needed, for the facilities that met our needs and our standards, the cost was anywhere from $4,000 to $8,000 a month out of pocket. So $4,000 to $8,000 a month out of pocket. Plus, then we still used my mother-in-law's insurance to cover her PCP, so her doctor, and some of those kind of things, and some medications. Those were still covered, but we paid out of pocket for lodging and nursing on site and all of those things that were needed. And I'm going to say one more thing and touch on one more thing about this. The people who work in long-term care facilities are amazing. If you're one of them, you are amazing. No matter what facility you work in, I know you are working hard. The disparity comes in how people and workers are paid in the facilities. They are paid very, very little in a very thankless, hard, difficult job. There's a lot of turnover. There are a lot of issues that come down from management. I've seen it. I've advocated for it. I've called people out on it. I've been a part of it. So it really comes down to that. Again, we live in a system and a society and a health insurance system that doesn't support people as they age. We don't respect elder care. We don't put the money and the resources towards it, which then limits the decisions and the options that we can make and have unless we have money in this country. That is where my soapbox comes. That is what I would love to see change. But I'm also here to tell you the truth, that if you are at a place that you can start saving now towards it, do it. And if you're not, I know not everyone is. It's a very privileged place to be. It's an absolutely privileged place to be. So if you're not in that place, then I recommend consulting with an estate attorney, because there are some options that you have, including Medicaid, that may help supplement some of that. And then you can also ask the estate attorney or someone that you trust about Social Security payments, because keep that in mind, that someone over a certain age in this country, depending on the work that they did and taxes they paid and all of those things that I can't talk about, they will get a certain amount of subsidy from Social Security, and that can go towards a payment in a long-term care facility. So just put that down as a note to ask about and find out about, to make sure that you are getting whatever kind of aid or financial help that you can in order to take care of yourself or a loved one. Okay, halfway done. I feel like I should give you an intermission. We're going into number 7 on starting to look for care. So again, lots of different factors and individual things that will come into play here. But as you start to look forward to what comes next, right? Either secondary and after independent living, or as a part of independent living. If you've noticed yourself or a loved one needs a little bit of help, what are some options? So the first thing to ask is if you want to stay at home, if you can stay at home, if you want to stay at home. This again is going to have some intense feelings involved with it. And again, I encourage you, make sure that you are not judging other people and bringing in kind of your own feelings around this, because it's going to be very personal. This is a hard time for people, realizing, okay, it is the next step. What comes next? Maybe I can't drive anymore. Maybe I can't have this life I've always wanted. Maybe I have to leave my neighbors and my support system. There's a lot going on with it. So I encourage a lot of patience, a lot of grace, a lot of love during this time. And if frustrations do come in, take a break, take a breather, walk away, and come back to it. So first thing, asking if you want to, or if that person wants to or can stay at home. If the answer is yes, then what needs to happen to support that? Can it be completely independent? Does it just mean things like having meals delivered? There's a lot of meal delivery services. We looked into many of these because I noticed one of the first things that can happen with a dementia or with any kind of decline in function is just the inability to shop and prepare meals. So you can look into grocery delivery service, you can look into meal delivery service, you can look into home physical therapy. This is a great option and something we explored years ago before we even got to the point of needing a long-term care facility. Is we had someone come in, a company that does home health care or home physical therapy. You can look at both. So home physical therapy would be if someone has had a fall or an injury or anything and they need some rehabilitation or strengthening to be done at home. A home physical therapist can come in. Sometimes this is covered by insurance. Sometimes it could be pay out of pocket. You can look into those things, but you could do home physical therapy. And they also can do a home assessment just to notice where some fall risks might be. Things that you don't think about, like carpets, right? Just freestanding rugs that are easy to trip over. They can look at those kind of things. They can help install railings in the bath and the shower. They can help with toilet seats, to raise toilet seats. So they can really help a lot if falling is an issue, especially in balance. So home physical therapy is something you can look into if that seems appropriate. Also, there are companies that do home health care. This is, again, dependent on the needs. Do you have someone who wants to stay at home but needs extensive nursing help or the services of a doctor or a nurse? So we're talking about possible dialysis or help with medication, those kind of things. So there's services that can help with that. And then there's more basic services on the home health or home aid side where people will come in and help prepare meals, do laundry, do housework, drive people to appointments, anything that needs to be done. I actually did that work before I started PT school. Between college and PT school, for about 6 months, I needed a short job, but I wanted it to be applicable to what I was doing. And that's what I did. I went into people's homes during the day. It was a different house almost every time, and I had a list of what was needed, and it was different for everyone. Sometimes it was, like I said, cooking meals, preparing meals. Sometimes it was driving people to appointments. Sometimes it was just being a companion and helping to go for walks. So that can be a really nice starting point if you, as the caregiver or family member, needs a little bit of peace of mind of how things are going at home. And now's the time I really want to throw it out there that it is important, if you are the caregiver, if you're the family member, it's important to know what is going on in the home. And sometimes we don't see it. We're not close. Either we don't live actually in proximity. We don't live in the same state. We don't live in the same town. Sometimes we just get busy and we don't travel, or we see people outside of their home. It's important to take a moment, take some time. If you have questions about what is going on, go into the home and just check things out. To be honest, one of the first things that set off alarm bells for me was going into the home just for a visit we were doing with my in-laws for a morning. I think we were having brunch. And I opened the refrigerator and I noticed so much expired food. And this was completely out of the norm. My mother-in-law was very diligent about grocery shopping and fresh food and things prepared, right? She was very diligent about it. So to see expired and moldy food in the fridge was a big red flag for me. And I wouldn't have seen that. And no one was talking about it. And so those kind of things, just checking things out. Do things seem different? Is trash not being taken out? Things like that can start to tell you that there might be a little bit of an issue that needs to be discussed. So just getting into the house can be really helpful. Then if you've moved beyond staying at home or your loved one being able to stay at home, one thing that might happen is there may be an injury. So like I mentioned, my mother-in-law fell. Very common to fall in the home and have broken bone, needing a total hip, needing a surgery, something like that. Something that makes it impossible to be independent in the house for a while. But If healing occurs and you go through rehab, that person can get back into independent living. In that case, it's short-term rehabilitation. Your doctor or surgeon will help guide that. Like I said, many times insurance will cover it. So that would be one option for that particular situation. And in that situation, it might be, again, that a PT is assigned to come help with the transition to home to make sure that person has what they need at home after the injury. Then, if you've realized independent living at home isn't going to be a possibility, if the short-term rehabilitation isn't applicable, or you've been through that, then you look at what the next option is. And there can be many. It depends, again, on the person's needs, the person's wants, the person's personality, where you live, what the options are, what kind of caretaking you have around you, what kind of resources you have. There's going to be options. So one of those might be something that looks like a retirement community. So this would be somewhere, my grandparents lived in something like this. They downsized. They went from a large home, 3 floors, just decided it was too much physically and housework and all of the things. And they had planned ahead to put a deposit down in this retirement community. So they moved into a smaller home, but they had their own home. It had a kitchen, it had a yard. It was great. But then also within the community was a communal kitchen where they could have the option of eating meals there every day if they chose to. The community brought in things like artwork and performances and so many activities every day, and a book club, and there was a hairstylist and a salon on site. These are really great options for people who have the ability to maintain that independence and that function, can function on their own, but they have that community aspect and some health care and help on site as needed. And so that's one aspect you can look into. Then we look into long-term care, depending again on if someone needs help. My mother-in-law, like I said, she had no ability to live independently. She was wheelchair bound. We needed help with transfers. We needed help with eating, preparing food, brushing teeth, all of it. And we needed a memory care site. So that's what you'll look into as well. Memory care typically, and again, there's many different levels. And I will say this from experience, if you have an issue involving dementia or Alzheimer's, in my case, my mother-in-law had Alzheimer's, it can be really helpful to have a facility that understands the specific needs of memory care. That being said, there are different levels of memory care as well, and you're going to want to look into that. Many of them do have a security component, which is important for many people with memory care issues. If they are mobile, they will try to leave. This is very common. They wander around and they will try to leave. I completely understand it. So there's security involved only in that. Maybe something will buzz if someone tries to leave. So it's a safety issue. So that's something to keep in mind. These are questions you'll want to ask when you are looking at facilities. Ask if they have a memory care portion or part. Many facilities are really great facilities, and then they have a kind of a separate additional memory care option. So we looked at places like that. But again, just make sure that they are set up with what they need, because memory care also takes a little bit different training when it comes to calming the nervous system, when it comes to many different issues like that with memory care. So in my opinion, it's very helpful if they either specialize in memory care or they at least have a component of the main site that does specialize in memory care. So you want to ask those kind of questions. You're going to want to find out if they can have their own room or if they have roommates. You'll want to find out if the facility can help them with eating, because believe it or not, there's many different certificates that are issued and different aspects to licensure on what a facility can and can't do. Some can prepare the food, but actually cannot help them physically eat. That was a big issue with us. My mother-in-law was able to physically feed herself in the first few years. She could not in the last few years. And we saw her losing weight because she was not able to feed herself and the facility she was in was not licensed to actually be able to physically help her eat. So we were going at mealtime to help her eat. These are things you don't always think about ahead of time. So just asking questions about what they're able to do. Another thing is transfers. Transfers mean being able to help someone move from the bed to the toilet, from the toilet to the shower, from the wheelchair to the shower. When someone can't do that independently and someone else has to help, it's called a transfer. Some facilities are only licensed to do one-person transfers. Some places can do two-person transfers. So again, just lots of questions to ask. Location might be something to consider as well. We found some nice facilities, but they were 35 minutes away, and that wasn't an option for us. We were going almost daily at the beginning, so we really wanted something that was 15 to 20 minutes away. And then price, of course, is going to be an issue as well. And then one thing I'm going to throw out here, once you do find a facility and you start talking with them and you sign paperwork, make sure anything that they say about keeping the prices down for you, not increasing prices, accepting insurance, accepting Medicaid, anything like that, make sure it is in writing. Don't take anyone's word for it. I hate to say it, but make sure that it is put in writing because that can come up later down the line as well. And then one other option I really want to point out is the option of hospice. So I did not fully understand hospice whatsoever when we started this journey. I really saw hospice as palliative care at the end of life, meaning in the last few months, which is not where we were at whatsoever. Then 2 years ago, our doctor mentioned hospice to help out because we had talked about how we didn't feel like she was getting enough help eating, that it might be helpful for someone else to come in to help with transfers sometimes. We had talked about that because we originally looked into not only having her at a facility, but then bringing in additional nursing help, like hiring a nurse a few times a week or even daily to come in and help. Because that is something else you can definitely look into that I didn't mention. You can look into that at home. You can look into 24-hour nursing care. If you really want to keep someone at home, but they cannot function independently or they need that additional help, you can. And finances will be a big part of if that's an issue for you, or if that's an option, I should say, for you. But please know that is optional. And you can sometimes do it for a short amount of time. So we had kind of started looking into how do we get some extra help at the long-term care facility because we didn't feel like she was getting everything that she needed. And we knew the facility couldn't necessarily offer it. So we talked to the doctor and she mentioned hospice. I did not know this was an option because she wasn't at end of life. And so we worked with a hospice company and it was free for the last 2 years of her life. Hospice was coming to visit her 2 to 3 times a week. And they helped things like dressing, doing her hair. A nurse from hospice would check in on her. And they actually really became the nurses that helped us when pressure wounds happened and sickness happened. I cannot say enough good things about hospice. And I'm sure you know that as well. Many of you work in hospice or have worked with people in hospice. Hospice is an amazing, amazing thing that we have. It's an amazing resource, and people who work in hospice are wonderful. And I just want to point out that it is an option to look into in any kind of situation. Ask the doctor, look around and see what kind of options are available because hospice really did help us quite a bit. And I will say we did end up having to actually change hospice companies because hospice is tough and there's a lot of turnover. And the first one we worked with, the care decreased significantly. And I'm going to talk about this more in my next point. But please note, hospice is great. Everything can be so helpful. And also, if you find that you're not getting the help or care you need, do not be afraid to ask questions and find that next helping resource to aid you on this journey. And this leads me right into point 8, which is be an advocate. I cannot say enough or emphasize this point enough about having an advocate on your team for both cases. If you find yourself needing care or if you are the caretaker, I will also say, well, there's two things I want to say. One is everyone involved in this situation needs to see themselves as an advocate. That is what you are. If you are taking care of someone else, you become their voice, especially if there's dementia or Alzheimer's involved whatsoever. There's any kind of memory care issue involved. You are their voice. So everyone within this process needs to see themselves as an advocate. Also, secondary to that, it is okay, and I think it can be really helpful to kind of appoint one person on the team or in the family to be that vocal advocate, if that makes sense. So I want everyone to really see themselves as an advocate and hold that responsibility to understand that you are their voice. But that can present itself in different ways. So for example, in our team, mostly my husband and I was the vocal medical advocate. That's my role. And that makes sense for what I do as a physical therapist. I could interpret charts and diagnoses and medications. I could talk through that. And also, she was my mother-in-law, and I loved her dearly. And she wasn't my mom. She was my husband's mom, and he was her main caretaker. So me being that one step removed, I think was really helpful for a lot of decisions that had to be made and just conversations that needed to be had when he was spent and had just no capacity left except to hold her hand. I could step up and say, you know what, let's walk out into the hall. I can have this conversation with you. Tell me what's going on with her wounds. Talk to me about increasing her morphine and what we need to do to make her comfortable. I can carry that. I can do that and be that role. I am proud and honored to do that. And it is probably the most important piece of all of this is having someone who isn't afraid to use their voice to speak up, because we did see many things along the line that we needed to ask questions about. And if you are afraid to be the squeaky wheel, you can actually cause your loved one harm because you're not using your voice for them. And I don't mean that in a bad way. You don't have to yell. You don't have to be mean. It's asking questions. In the first facility we were at, when we noticed she wasn't getting help eating, we had to ask. And it was probably the first part of all of this that I really had to say, you know what, what's going on? She's not eating. And that's when we found out, oh, we can't help her eat. Okay, well, that would have been nice to know. Would have been really helpful to know. But we didn't know what questions even to ask. We didn't even understand, and we didn't see how this was going to play out. We didn't even really foresee a future where she couldn't lift an arm to feed herself. When you're in the midst of it, it's hard to see what might be coming. But asking that question was the first step to understanding what her needs are, what we need to decide going forward. Oh, okay, thank you for telling me that. We didn't understand what are our options. Can we come at mealtime? Can you cut her food smaller? That was a big part of it too going forward is, okay, can she just have finger foods? Like, don't give her things to cut like other people. Just give her finger foods. That's what she can do. So you have to really be willing to see what's going on, to step into the discomfort of it all, and to see what's going on and to ask the questions that need to be asked for you, for them. Be specific. Ask what help is offered and what you can do and what activities are there and what food they're going to be given. Be an advocate. I have spent countless hours in meetings and on the phone and emails talking about plans of care, approving changes to medication, changing doctors, changing hospice, advocating for her. And now that she's passed, I can be that person then to make appointments at funeral homes and things that I don't want my husband and his brother to have to do. They get to grieve. They need to do those things. I can step in and do the other things because I have the capacity to and the ability to. So again, everyone within the team and the process can use their voice in what ways make the most sense. Because when it comes to finances and sharing finances, I'm not a part of that. So my husband uses his voice for that. He can negotiate prices, and he's the one that's looking into the Social Security payments, and he's the one in charge of the bank accounts and the payments that go in and out. I don't touch that. I don't know what's going on with that. So we have divided the roles up in the ways that make sense for our talents and our capacity, but we're advocating in our own ways. So again, decide what you can do, and it's okay if your capacity sometimes is little, and it's okay if it's big sometimes. But decide what way you can be an advocate, and then be that advocate. And one other thing to say about this, if you don't have the capacity, because I will say, I can't tell you how many times I have thought during this process, thank goodness I'm a physical therapist. Like, thank goodness I understand medicine and insurance and can ask these questions, because it would be a lot harder if you couldn't, or if you didn't have a team around you. If you feel alone in this, it can feel like a lot. There are places and companies that can offer an advocate to help you. So ask for those resources. Google it. Ask the facility. Ask the loved one's doctor. Don't be afraid. Again, be the squeaky wheel. Ask hospice. Find someone to help you in this advocate place so you know what to ask and you can step up and be the best support that you can be. All right, number 9 is to prepare your kids. We are in a unique situation that we are literally the sandwich generation, and we have been for the past 4 years during this process. Like I mentioned, our kids were 18 months and 5 years when my father-in-law died and we took over care. And we have been thrust right into the belly of it since then. For the first month, we were there every single day. We were at the hospital to start, and then we were at the short-term rehab facility, and then we went right into the long-term care facility, and our kids were with us every day, visiting every single day. And a lot of it was because we didn't have a choice. That's it. They were with us. And then we went right into COVID where they weren't in school. So they were with us. And that was a whole other thing, helping and dealing with elder care during COVID. And we brought them with us everywhere that we could, anytime that we needed to. They were there with us. And again, it wasn't always by choice. There were times I would have sheltered them from it, but they were with us. We're a team, and that's the way it worked out. And I don't regret a single second, because what they have seen when it comes to respecting elder care, when it comes to respecting and honoring the aging process, when it comes to looking people in the eye, and everyone at each of her long-term care facilities, when they saw us bringing the kids in, I wish you would have seen their smiles. People were so happy to see them there. And we made it so that it was after the first month or two, after the shock of it all, when we just had to bring them along, and I was just putting paper and crayons in my bag to just let them scribble as much as I could. After those first few months, when the shock and the trauma of it wore off a little and we got into a pattern, we made it so that it was a special experience. So one thing I did was I made a special toy box that we kept at grandma's, and it had paper in it, and it had crayons and markers, and it had some special puzzles and on-the-go travel games in it, and we had a couple of special books in it and some cars, special things that we just kept there. And that was one thing I did. And honestly, until the last days, we would go and they'd say, "Can we have our box, please?" And I'd get it down. We had cards in it. We played War. Just this past week, sitting vigil with her, me and the kids were playing War right by her bedside. Exposing them to the importance of honoring our elders and honoring people as they age and not being afraid of it is invaluable. It is invaluable. Don't be afraid to expose your kids to this. And don't be afraid to have some fun with it. We laughed with Grandma so much, and we would play songs and we would sing. It was not a somber occasion, except when it needed to be. We made it fun. Her first facility, and this habit started during COVID when we were only allowed to visit her outside. They had kind of a roundabout, and we brought the kids scooters. every time we visited, and we would sit with grandma in her wheelchair outside and just watch the kids, and they just scootered in the parking lot. Scooter, 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 stop for water, scooter, scooter, scooter. And she loved watching them, and my husband and I got to talk to her, and then I could talk to the facility, and he would help her eat. And we did that, and every Saturday for the last 3 years, again, after those first few years when we were there constantly, every Saturday was visit grandma, the whole family. And they know that's what we did. We brought food, and we had lunch, and we played outside, and I just want to encourage you that you can include your small kids in this. I think they're going to see things and learn things, and they learn by example, and by seeing you honoring the aging process, it will ingrain in them that it is important for them to do it as well. Number 10, I think, is the last really practical one. If you can, and it doesn't always work out this way. It did not for my father-in-law. It was very, like I said, traumatic, very fast. We were thrown into it. And so with my mother-in-law, when we were sitting vigil those last 6 days, and we knew it was inevitable, and we knew what we knew from 4 years ago, my brother-in-law made an appointment with the funeral home close by, and we had that appointment in her last few days. And again, it was something I could do and my brother-in-law could do, and my husband continued to sit with his mom. And we made preparations according to what we knew were her wishes, and we had that in place. And that also can really smooth the way. Because if you don't have it in place ahead of time, it's completely okay. Okay, don't feel like this stuff has to be done. We did it all without any of this, and it worked out. I'm just trying to smooth the way a little bit. If you have it done, it allows you to just go into the grieving process without feeling like you have to do so many things and make so many decisions so quickly. Because when someone passes, you will be asked what funeral home you're using, because that is who comes to take care of and honor and respect the body of your loved one. And so if it is at all possible, I do recommend just choosing a funeral home, having a short meeting, they'll probably want to, and just having a few things that they ask for in place ahead of time so that you have a little more space to grieve when the time comes. Number 11 is take care of yourself. This is easy to lose so many aspects about this. When you love someone deeply and you realize you might be losing them, when you do have little kids to take care of, when you are working, if you're working a 9-to-5 job and you have to ask for paid time off, or you start losing a salary because of the time you have to take, if you live across the country and you're traveling back and forth, if it is stressful, all of the things, because it will be stressful and time consuming and exhausting, all of those things will take things away from you. And that's okay. It's the sacrifice we make. And also, you have to find a way to take care of yourself. If this is a long-term chronic place that you're in, make sure that you have time during the week to do something for yourself. I know for my husband, he is a superhuman, the way he took care of his mom, an absolute superhuman. And he would have gone every single day if he could. And I know the level of guilt he sometimes felt not being able to go every day. And that can be a hard thing, to hold on to all the time. And there's only so much I can say to him, it's okay, don't feel that. But what I could do is say, you know what, I can go today. So there are things that I could do to help take care of him so he could take care of himself. And so that's important too. If you can, have someone around you or be that person to someone. It makes a big difference. But take care of yourself. Drink water. Sometimes it's just staying hydrated. Drink water. Take breaths. Sunshine. In these last days when we were with her and we were both there together, he would just go outside and stand in the sun for 10 days and I would sit with her and, being with the kids, getting lots of kids hugs. But again, when it's long-term, take care of yourself, take care of your body. It is very wearing on your own body, especially if you're doing physical work of transfers yourself. Stay strong. Get help if you need to. One thing that we didn't take a trip at all in the first probably 2 years. And I will say it, like I said, it kind of led. We were in the midst of this for a while, and then COVID came in, but we didn't take a trip for a really long time. We didn't feel like we could leave. And then we finally did, which felt like a big step, and needed step for sure. And then what happened is we took a family trip with Brian's brother, with my husband's brother. And so neither of us would be here. And we were feeling so much worry and guilt about it. So I reached out to our local physical therapy grad school, where I went to PT school. I reached out to a professor and said, do you have anyone who might be able to come in every day, a great PT student who wants a little experience and can just sit with her? And we did. And we brought this person in who was fabulous. Absolutely, absolutely amazing. And she came 1 hour, as many days as she could. And we paid her just an hourly rate. And she checked in with me by text each day she was there. And she just made sure she was helping my mother-in-law eat and drink and giving her some attention and some love. And that was a huge act of self-care for us, actually. It gave us such peace of mind. So there are various creative ways to get it. But just make sure, if you are a caregiver, that you are also giving care to yourself. Last one. And if you're still here, thank you so much for sticking with me throughout this time. Taking care of someone as they age is sacred work. It is holy, sacred, good work. And I believe that in my bones. Whatever you can give to someone, and only you know your capacity. And don't feel guilty if you don't have more to give. But whatever you can, if you are put into a situation, believe that it is important work in the world. I truly believe that. I wrote in my post this week that we don't necessarily choose elder care. It's not a situation any of us would choose to be in. But it is an honor and a gift to be in this situation. And if you find yourself thrust into it, even if it's involuntary, try to find a way to thrive there. Try to find a way to thrive there. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy whatsoever. It means that it is worthwhile and it will change you. The past 4 years have been life-changing for me, for our family. It has only brought us closer. I am so proud of my husband. I'm so proud of my kids. It has been an honor to witness my husband be a son to his mother. It has been an honor to witness the people around us and how they support us. And it's been an honor to sit with my mother-in-law and hold her hand and hear her stories, even with very, very few words. I will say we had a unique case with Alzheimer's in that she was wheelchair bound almost the entire time. She lost the use of her words very quickly. But she, I believe, always knew who we were, especially my husband. And with me, I don't think she could have said my name the last year or two. She couldn't have pointed at me and said who I was, but she knew that she was supposed to know me and that I was a safe person. She always knew that. And that is what I'm happy for, that she knew when I was there, she was safe. And I think that's what we can give people. We can't always give them words. You can't always get through with your words if there's dementia and Alzheimer's. You will not get a thank you. And sometimes you will even get yelled at. I've seen that part of Alzheimer's too when I've worked with patients. I was lucky to not have to deal with it here, but I have seen it. And it's hard. It is wearing on you. I've seen it, and I'm so sorry if you're going through that. But just know, if nothing else, you can be the safe space for someone going through these things. And I believe it's sacred work. And thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. thank you for anyone, again, who sent messages, and thank you if you are in the midst of this work yourself. Whether you are a caretaker, or you work in hospice, or you're a nurse, or you are aging and allowing some of us to take care of you. I appreciate you, and I'm sending you all of my love. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much for joining me today on Meet Your Body. If you have a moment, please consider rating and reviewing this podcast, as it helps us tremendously. For more resources and workouts, you can visit my website, jessicavallantpilates.com, or find me on YouTube or Instagram at Jessica Vallant Pilates.